So dear students, I welcome you to my class and I wish you good afternoon. And today we will read out the first chapter of Things Fall Apart. Things Fall Apart is an African fiction, and this fiction is known as a counter discourse of Eurocentric perspective or Eurocentric attitude towards Africa. So this text challenges Eurocentric attitude towards Africa. And Chinua Achebe has started this text with an epigraph. There is a quotation that has been borrowed from the poem The Second Coming by W.B. Yeats. Turning and turning the widening gyre, the falcon cannot hear the falconer. Things fall apart. Mere anarchy is loosed upon the world. So things fall apart. Just think of this statement. Things fall apart. And this very particular part from this quotation has been used as the title of this text. So Chinua Achebe has borrowed this title from a European writer, that is W.B. Yeats. And he is writing against the European stereotyped attitude towards Africa. Eurocentric presentation of Africa is very much distorted. Europe has distorted Africa in its portrayal or depiction. And Chinua Achebe has offered a discourse on the part of Africa to show that the stereotyped portrayal of Africa by the European discourse or Eurocentric discourse is not right. So while doing that very great job, Chinua Achebe has borrowed the title from a European writer. And he is also writing this text in one of European languages. So just think, why has he done so? He has done this to be comprehensible to European audience, or to make Africa comprehensible to the European audience so that they can understand Africa in their own language, and so that they can understand that the depiction of Africa produced by the European colonizers or European authors is not right. So this is a kind of challenge, or this is a kind of counter discourse. Now I like to draw your attention to the first chapter of this text. You know that this text is divided into 3 divisions. In the first division, we find Okonkwo's struggle, and he makes his fortune through hard struggle. He did not inherit anything from his father. He did not inherit any barn, or he did not inherit any fertile piece of land from his father, because his father was a musician, a man of flute, who did not leave anything for his son at the time of his death. But Okonkwo, through his hardship, made his own fortune. He is now a prosperous farmer, and he is one of the leaders of 9 villages. He has got 3 wives and several children. In the second section of this book, you will find Okonkwo's banishment to Mubanta, that is the neighboring village, the village of his maternal uncle. And there he had to spend 7 years of his life in exile, because by mistake he shot a kinsman. As a part of the punishment decided by the local tradition, he had to go on self-exile. So in exile, he spent 7 years in the neighboring village. And during this span of time, he got lots of information from his friend Obirika that the missionary came to the village Umofia, and the Christians were trying to convert the local people. They set up a school. They also set up hospitals. They are providing the people with education and health facilities. Not only that, they have brought with them their Bible and their judiciary. So they are well fortified, and they are not only converting the people into Christians, but also establishing their authority. So thus we find that the colonization process is a profit-making process. It is not a religious mission, or it is not a mission for enlightenment. This is a mission for converting the people into Christians, annihilating them from their own culture and cultural identity, and making mercantile activities there to maximize their profit. Even Okonkwo's own son, Novi, was also converted into a Christian. So these unexpected incidents that Okonkwo never expected happened during his exile in Mubanta. And this span of 7 years is covered in the second section, or the middle section of this text. In the last section, we find that Okonkwo comes back to his village Umofia after 7 years of his exile. And now he is desperately trying his best to retain his authority that he lost 7 years ago. And he was also amazed at the behavior of his clansmen. because many of the people who attain titles or who were very influential personalities of the village, or even who were the members of Igu Igu, the masked spirits who used to maintain judiciary of the village, took up Christianity. They took up Christian culture, European culture, and they gave up their ancestors' culture and tradition. So that very picture that Okonkwo saw in his village after 7 years of his exile made him furious. That is, Okonkwo got furious, and he also desperately tried to regain his authority or bring all the things right. He found that things fall apart because of the activities of the missionary. So he wanted to bring things in order. But he could not figure out the problems specifically. The specific problem that Okonkwo could not understand was that the people were segregated. The people were embraced by the ideology of the colonizers. The people lost their integrity. They did not have the integrity that they had 7 years ago. So why? Because of the activities of the missionary. So Okonkwo could not understand the psychological change of his classmate, but he was trying to bring things right desperately. And that is the tragic flaw of Okonkwo. That is, he had fury, he had physical strength, but he did not have a strong epistemological ground or philosophic ground. He could not embrace the people with his philosophy of integrity or with his message of the value of integrity or the value of identity. So he was not a good orator, and at the same time, he was not a sagacious man. For that reason, he could not formulate his anger or his wrath towards the missionary. That was his great flaw, and that flaw ultimately led him to his tragedy. So anyway, one day the Igu Igu destroyed a church in Umuofia. Actually, that was a turning point in the plot of this novel. After the destruction of the church, the leaders of the people of Umuofia were arrested, and Okonkwo was one of them. They were taken into custody. Their heads were shaved and they were fined. That is, they had to pay 250 cowries for each as compensation. They were also physically humiliated. So Okonkwo could not digest the humiliation because he was one of the leaders of the people. So how could he digest the humiliation on the part of the outsiders? So he called all the people of his community to a meeting in a marketplace next morning while he came back, after he had come back from his custody. And while the meeting was going on, 2 court messengers came and prohibited the gathering or the crowd to continue the meeting. Okonkwo got furious. He did not spend even a single moment. In the twinkling of an eye, he cut off the throat of one of the messengers. And the other messenger fled away. And Okonkwo thought that the other people would join his action. They would not let the other messenger flee. But to his utter dismay, he found that his clansmen did not do anything, or they did not join his action. So this is the scene in which Okonkwo understood that he was alienated and the things really fell apart. That was the scene, or that was the incident in the plot of this novel in which Okonkwo understood that things really fell apart because his clansmen did not show any sort of solidarity or integrity with him. They let the court messenger flee away. So anyway, Okonkwo went back home and he committed suicide. Now, if you question why did he commit suicide? He committed suicide because he could realize that the community that he saw 7 years ago was not as it had been before. The people were segregated. Even many of the leaders of the community took up Christianity. They were converted into Christians. They were also sending their children to the missionary school. Even his own son Noe has gone to a missionary school. He received education and became a teacher there. So he could realize that it was not possible for him to bring all the people back to his own community. After realizing the futility of his resistance, after realizing that he was getting marginalized by his own wrath, by his own fury, by his own ignorance of the realities, he committed suicide. That is, he hanged himself. He hanged himself with a tree and he died. And he met the death of a dog, according to his friend Obirika. So this is a tragedy. And many critics find that this novel is analogous with a Greek tragedy. So how? If you think of the character of Obirika, this very character served as a chorus, that is commentator. Obirika in different situations of Okonkwo's life through comments and arguments. And he also tried to bring about a kind of harmony in the activity of Okonkwo, but he failed. But he did not stop commenting on Okonkwo's activities. Besides, in this novel, you will find the treatment of gods and goddesses. We find here Earth Goddess Annie. We also find here a priestess, Chielo, Agbala also. And we also get the reference to different ancestral spirits. So we find a spirit world here. And these spirits control the activities, the fate, of the living persons or living people that we usually find in Greek tragedies. In Greek tragedies, fate plays a very important role. So here in this novel, you will find that fate, under the disguise of the oracle, plays a very important role. So you will find some elements of Greek tragedies in this text, and for that reason, this text is considered to be analogous with Greek tragedies. But you cannot call Okonkwo a tragic hero analogous with the Greek tragic heroes, because the Greek tragic heroes are usually led by their hamartia or tragic flaw, and that very hamartia led them to their downfall or tragedy, and their fall gives out a sense of catharsis, that is purification or purgation. They also belong to the royal status or royal family. And if you think of all these things and consider the character of Okonkwo, you will find that Okonkwo's character is not of the status of the Greek tragic heroes. Okonkwo's tragedy does not arise pity and fear in the minds of the readers. So why? Because Okonkwo is undoubtedly a great warrior, and his war was against the advent of European colonizers. And the objective of his struggle was to preserve his own culture and cultural identity. But if you analyze his character very meticulously, you will find that Okonkwo has broken his tradition several times or repeatedly while he was struggling to preserve his tradition. So this very great irony has made Okonkwo's character full of dichotomy or full of binary oppositions. That is, he was trying to preserve his tradition, and at the same time, he was frequently breaking his tradition. Suppose in the Peace Week, he beat his wife, which was strictly prohibited by the tradition among the Igbos. Or he killed a kinsman during the funeral of Ijudu, the eldest man of the village. That was also against the tradition. That is, killing a kinsman is against a tradition. But he killed that very kinsman by mistake, though by mistake. This is another example of his breaking of his own tradition. Then he killed Ikemefuna, who called him father. The eldest man of the village, Ijudu, told him not to participate in the mission of killing of Ikemefuna. But he didn't pay heed to him because he thought that remaining absent from that mission of killing Ikemefuna was a kind of effeminacy for him. So he was very much afraid of being effeminate. That was another attempt of breaking the tradition of his own community. Because a father cannot kill his son. As Ikemefuna, his foster son, called him father, he was not to kill the son, but he himself cut off the throat of the boy and killed him and proved that he was masculine. And another important aspect that was against the tradition of his own community was his attitude, negative attitude towards women. He was always afraid of being as soft as women because he always considers himself to be a wildfire. To be soft is to him to be a woman. For that reason, very often he dreamt that his daughter Izidma should have been a son. So why? Because he thought that womanhood was synonymous with weakness. But he forgot that while he was in precarious situation after killing his kinsman, that is Ijedu's son, his mother's village, Mubanta, or his mother's brother, Uchendu, gave him the shelter. So the ultimate shelter is mother. So motherhood is not a kind of weakness. Motherhood is a kind of shelter, is a kind of consolation. So he coincided motherhood with weakness or softness. Womanhood is not weakness at all. Womanhood is a kind of support to a man. A woman is not subordinate. A woman is not equal or is not same as a man, but she may be equal to a man regarding her roles in agriculture, regarding her roles in economy or income generating activities. So equality and sameness are not same. Suppose a man can be equal to a woman can be equal to a man, but a woman is not same as a man because a woman is of female sex and a man is of male sex. So they are different on the basis of their sexual identity. And Okonkwo could not understand the difference between equality and sameness. A woman may be a partner. A woman may be the owner, but a woman may not be the same as a man. Okonkwo could not understand this very subtle difference. That is another cause of his destruction or tragedy. So thus we find that Okonkwo's character is a bundle of contradictions. So this novel is also a psychoanalytical novel. It throws sufficient light on feminist approach to African life. This novel is also sufficiently throwing light on different rituals of the Africans. For example, in this novel, you will see the function or the celebration of the marriage ceremony of Obirika's daughter. You will also find the funeral ceremony of Ijedu. So marriage is one of the important rituals in any culture that you will find here in this text. Funeral, it is also another powerful ritual of any culture. And Chinua Achebe has depicted this ritual here. And in this novel, you will also find the celebration of the market week or market day by the people of Africa. So you know that market is a place where people from different corners of a society gather. Their behavior their activities, their conversations, their interactions, their dress code, their belief system, their pantheons. So all these things can be visualized after analyzing a marketplace and the behavior of the people gathered in the marketplace. So in this text, you will find a very complete picture of African society. So by doing this, Chinua Achebe means to say to the European readers that Africa is not a dark continent, or Africa is not a vacuum or a blank slate on which the Europeans can write anything they want. Africa has its own culture, cultural identity. Africa has its own rituals. Africa has its own behavior or behavioral traits. All these things are not same as those of the Europeans. But all these things can have the value, can have the importance to be equal to the cultural ingredients of the Europeans. So this is the difference between equality and sameness. Suppose while taking food, we use our fingers. The Europeans use forks and knives while taking food. So I am not same as the Europeans in my eating habit. I am not same as the Europeans. But I am culturally equal to the Europeans because I have my culture and they have their own culture. So regarding the possession of culture, I am equal to them. But I am not same as them. I am equal to them. Actually, this is the message that Chinua Achebe wants to incorporate into this text. So we must keep it in mind while reciting this text. So now let's start this text. I like to read the first chapter today for your sake and analyze it critically. Chapter 1. Okonkwo was well known throughout the 9 villages and even beyond. So 9 is a mysterious number, and this number produces an atmosphere of mystery. A kind of sensation is created around this number, and the numbers like this, for example, 7, 3, 13, 9. So just look at the first sentence of this text. Okonkwo was well known throughout the 9 villages and even beyond. So the community is built up with 9 villages. And Okonkwo is well known among the people of these 9 villages or even beyond. His fame rested on solid personal achievements. As a young man of 18, he had brought honor to his village by throwing Emelins the cat. Emelins was the name of a wrestler, and he was called by the people Cat because he was as prompt as a cat, and his back did never touch the earth like that of a cat. So Emelinge was the great wrestler who for 7 years was unbeaten from Umofia to Mubino. So these are 2 villages. He was called the cat because his back would never touch the earth. It was this man that Okonkwo threw in a fight, which the old men agreed was one of the fiercest since the founder of the town engaged a spirit of the wild for 7 days and 7 nights. So this very man was invincible, Emma Lynch. He was unbeaten by his fellow wrestlers. But Okonkwo was the man who defeated this invincible person, and he won fame and name in 9 villages. So even in the first passage of this chapter, you will have a very clear idea about Okonkwo, the protagonist of this text. Okonkwo is the protagonist of this text because almost in every page of this text, you will find Okonkwo, or while Okonkwo is not present, you will find the conversation is about Okonkwo. So he is occupying the nucleus